Appreciate you taking the time to visit
Again.
with us this morning. So,
Thank you, Brian.
Joe, you're running in Area 1. Tell us, what was your main motivation for seeking a seat on the Board of Trustees?
Well, Area 1 is also known as the South Triad community, which is the South Side and also Sun Valley. And so that's been a huge area that's been without a voice that I can recall for over 20 years. I was born and raised in Cheyenne, so I've known this community a long time. And I remember the last board member that sat from the South Side on the Board of Trustees. And so it's been a while. And so that was one of my motivations, because I was also part of the group that helped establish this seat after a long, long fight. But it took a lot of people to get this seat back. And so my hope is that I am entrusting that these people in the South Triad will trust me with their vote. One of the biggest reasons I also decided to run was there's a lot of hate that's being thrown around the district. 2018 was the first incident at McCormick Junior High, and I was part of a group that dealt with that. And here it is 5 years later, I believe, 2018, 4 years, and we're still dealing with that same ideology of hate in schools or even in the community. So that was one of my main motivations. Again, going back to the loss of voice, I've been a community organizer, a community activist, gosh, Brian, for over 40 years. I've ran campaigns, political campaigns. I ran in 2020, lost a close primary. So people began to know who I was. Well, they knew who I was before that, and they called me a radical, actually. And I did get crazy sometimes about the issues that were affecting Cheyenne and Wyoming, as a matter of fact. And so all those ideas that came across from that time in 2018 to now, even in my past, facing discrimination, facing bigotry, banning books. That's another reason. I'm a reader from grade 5, I think. And I was put in a little cubicle, I call it the closet, with 5 other students when I was in school, and they taught us to read. And I hated it, but I came out loving reading, Brian. And I will not talk against reading in any form, because it grows the mind, it grows the imagination. And I volunteered in 2 schools in Hebert and Goings as a foster grandparent, and I could see the light bulbs light up when kids knew how to read. That is so glorious, Brian. So that's my motivations.
That's good. So if you're elected, how would you make sure you're considering the needs of all constituents? As you said, this Area 1 is the South Triad, but that's not just South Cheyenne. It's also areas of East. So how would you make sure you're considering the needs of all constituents?
Well, one of the things I would, and like I'm doing right now, is I'm visiting all schools, and I'm trying to talk to all the principals in all the schools. We have South, Johnson Junior High, and for the life of me, I probably couldn't remember all the elementary schools, but there are 9 of them in the South Triad. Sunrise, Bain, and Lephart are actually in the Sun Valley area. The other schools are in the actual South Side area. So I would talk to all of them, just like I'm doing now, and use my experience that I've used in the past to build community. Like I said, I've been a community organizer, a community activist, so I know how to speak to people from all levels of education, from all backgrounds. I can speak very little Spanish anymore, but I am getting back to speaking my Spanish again, so I can relate to the residents that are in the South Triad that are primarily Spanish speakers. So I know how to bring groups together. I know how to bring allegiances together. I've fought hard for over 20 years in the city of Cheyenne in the state of Wyoming. So I just think I know I have the skills and the ability and the experience to bring this community together now that it has a voice.
What do you think the relationship between the school board and parents should look like?
A collaborative effort, Brian. The school board, I would myself, again, I get elected, I will be visiting the neighborhoods and going out and letting them know who I am. I've always done that whenever I've had something to do, whenever I had a project, I would let people know who I was and why I'm doing certain things so that they can become part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And for the most part, it worked. So that's what I plan to do now. I got some new shoes. So I plan to put some rubber on those babies, just talking and bringing folks together. And it's always amazing doing the door-to-door canvassing, Brian, when you meet a person and whether they're on your side or not, just to talk with them. And then again, watch the ideas go in their head and go, oh, okay, well, that doesn't sound too bad. Okay, I think I'll look at what you're doing. So you change an idea just in the snap of a second sometimes when you're doing that door-to-door canvassing.
What should the rules of engagement be at school board meetings?
Pleasant. Positive. Again, like I told you, 2018, I probably wasn't as pleasant to the school board because of what happened with the McCormick issue that I should have been, because I did get angry, because I was asking them why I should be here, standing in front of the school board, talking about issues of bigotry and discrimination and hatred, when we should be way beyond that, and we weren't. And so I did get upset. So I do know how people can get when issues are burning in their hearts and their heads. And so we do have to listen with compassion, listen with sincerity, and listen with an open mind. So that's what should be the rules of engagement at a school board meeting.
If it starts to get out of control, what do you think the school board's role is, and how much should public comment be limited?
Well, currently with the school, because I've attended some of the school board meetings now, and it's again a lot different than when I attended in 2018. So they do have different rules set up so that you can have a 3-minute talking period, which is good. And if you exceed that, they shut you off. So you can't talk anymore. It goes, video goes blind or blank. And so you have to actually be quiet then after that. Even if you want to talk more, they just ask you to please step aside and let the next person, because everybody gets to have 3 minutes, whoever gets up there to talk. And again, you have to do it beforehand so that they know who's coming. So that takes a lot of the possibilities out of maybe some chaos happening at the school board meeting. So I know last year probably a lot of chaos happened. Again, I wasn't part of those meetings, but from what I read and from what I heard from talking with people, it did get crazy, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be an open discussion. And yeah, you know, you get mad, you get angry, you get frustrated, but let's not take it to that level of hatred rhetoric.
Sounds like you're okay with the time limit. You think that works?
3 minutes, 3 minutes is a long time to talk, Brian, if you've ever talked. I've talked before. In 3 minutes, man, it seems like forever sometimes. Because sometimes you're trying to figure out the exact format to get that 3 minutes in. So to me, it's acceptable.
And you mentioned that the district requires people to register in advance.
Yes.
For commenting.
To get on the agenda,
If you don't know what the issue is specifically, do you think that's the appropriate way to do it? Should there be flexibility?
Well, they give an agenda out, and they do let people know what's going on at the school. And you can always go back and read those agendas online. So again, I think it's, with technology today, it's an appropriate way to go. Okay? And plus we have email, we have texting, we have we have everything in this moon to talk to people. So I think being left out of the question isn't a question anymore, because you can be in the question and you can be in the answer.
Very good. Do you think that K-12 schools in Wyoming are adequately funded? And if not, how would you recommend the legislature address that issue?
Well, currently the Wyoming Education Association has brought suit against the Department of Education, well, the legislature, who controls the money. Schools have not been adequately funded for years, Brian, and they keep going in decline. And rather than trying to fix the problem, the legislature puts the Band-Aids on the problems. And again, coming from a human service, social service environment, Band-Aids don't work, Brian. They do not work at all, because they come off real easily. And so the legislatures had studies, they've done other things to say what we're doing adequately is adequate funding, and every time a study comes out it says no, you have to spend more. And so the legislature goes back and goes, oh my God, we can't do this. And we've got to come up with a solution, Brian. They've got to stop fiddling around, pointing fingers, and saying, let's get this done. Because if we're truly a state that believes in students, in all students, then we've got to figure out the best formula for funding those inadequacies in the school system. Again, if the district did make a resolution that said they would go along possibly with the suit that the WEA has. This district, if not the largest, is the second largest. And if we put our name on that suit, I think things could change differently. Are we afraid? Are we not there yet? I don't know. We did do the resolution, or the district did do the resolution. So the next step is now joining the suit. So I think in order to put pressure on the state legislature, it's got to go through. The governor, again, appointed another group to study the situation. That was last year, so they should have had a report out by now. So it'd be interesting to see that report and see what they say, and see if, again, it says you need more money. And they need to follow that ideology.
Joe, can you be more specific about how you think schools are not adequately funded? What areas do you see where they're not?
ARP is falling apart. ARP Elementary, 1961 it was built. Okay, they have modulars that are teaching their students in. That's unacceptable. The next school that's probably old in the South Triad is Cole Elementary. I mean, it's probably built in the 60s as well. The next school would be possibly Bain on the South Triad. Lephart, Fairview came together, but Lephart is an older school as well. Fairview is an older school, so they had to close one down to get the students over to the Lephart area. Now, how do you think parents felt about that? They had a school of their own, and all of a sudden the district decides we need to close that because of budgetary constraints. Well, I've been a grant writer all my life. In grant writing, you have to figure out solutions, and long-range solutions, Brian. This district, this legislature has not figured out long-range solutions or short-range plans even to get to those long-range solutions. Again, my experience, my background has always been chunking things out. We chunk things out to see the end result. And we work on chunks, we get that chunk done, we get another chunk done, we get another chunk, and pretty soon we're at the end of that solution. And so that's how I would work with things. Look at all the deficiencies and let's figure out where do we stand? Where do we stand on that list of being a building that needs resources built on it? We can't, and when I was with, when I volunteered, there was a lot of modulars when I was volunteering. Okay, again, how do you learn? Air's coming in probably cold. Yeah, the buildings are old. When I was at Goings, in the wintertime, we opened up the windows because it was too hot. In the summertime, we opened the windows. It was hot again. I mean, we gotta bring our stuff up to date. Healthy environments includes everything, not just students. It includes buildings, people, teachers, administrators, parents that can come in and feel that healthiness. That's what it takes, Brian.
As a board member, what would your priorities be for the budget for the district?
Well, one, looking again at our aging schools, not only in the South Triad, because there's probably aging schools all over the city. We've got some beautiful schools that have been built, but we still have other schools that need attention. We just can't keep ignoring and building another school and building another school. We've got to figure out that priority. Funding teacher salaries, but again, that goes along with that suit. That suit has so much to do with teacher salaries. Now, again, the district did approve a plan for their custodial support staff, those kind of guys, the kitchen staff, where they are going to get raises, which is nice. I just heard that last night at the board meeting. But we're still dealing with teachers and the other professionals that are in the schools, librarians, those kind of folks. We need those kind of folks, and we have shortages in teachers. I understood, and again, that's why I'd be visiting schools, that some schools in the South Triad don't have librarians full-time. Okay, well, again, you can't create an environment of learning on part-time stuff, Brian. So that would be one of the things. So looking at our school's infrastructure, teacher salaries, how to partner with more businesses in the South, not only the South Triad, but in the community. I've got a bunch of small businesses in the South Triad in Sun Valley area. Again, I drove around just to look at what was going on, just to look at the environment, because that's how I work. As I look at the environment, then I figure out how can I better serve these people, or these residents, or these students, or these parents. So, community involvement has got to be important as to how we resolve issues. Okay, so my idea would be, how do I get these small mom and pop businesses become sponsors of South Triad schools and plant their name right there to say, yeah, you're one of the followers and the leaders of this area.
Are there any other things that the district needs to be spending more money on that you're seeing deficiencies? Assuming the legislature gave all the money that was needed, what would be your priorities?
First, the teacher salary, then the school infrastructure.
Okay.
That would be the priority for me.
Okay. Sounds good. Obviously, you just addressed this with teacher compensation, but if the legislature has to decide what to do based on this WEA lawsuit, are there other ways to fund teacher salary increases? And how much do you think we're behind in terms of paying teachers?
Well, I don't know. I hadn't had a chance. I wanted to look at the Rocky Mountain region myself before I came here, and I didn't get a chance to see how we compare to teacher salaries in the Rocky Mountain area. And that would be Idaho, Montana, this area. Because I can't say New York has a bigger salary, California has a bigger salary. I've got to say we're comparable to the Rocky Mountain area, or we're not comparable. You know, Montana teachers get $20 more than we do. So we should be equitable with the Montana teachers. Okay? If we're not, then let's figure out a way how to do that. So we'd have to, again, unfortunately, maybe a study has to be done, but on wage compensation and how does it compare? And maybe they've done that already. And maybe they don't want to look, I don't know. So I would be studying just things as I go along as a school board run, and other things so that I can talk professionally about them.
Do you think there are too many positions in the district from what you know? Is it a matter of reducing some positions and paying those who are remaining more, or are we actually so understaffed at this point that we need both more positions and more pay?
I think we need to look at alternatives maybe. Again, in the nonprofit world and in the business world, you learn how to do many things. You become a guy that knows how to wash dishes and clean dishes and scrub the floor and mop the floor. So you become not only competent, but you become competent in many areas. So maybe we have to look at that, how we can create a competency level that maybe one teacher can jump into another teacher's position to cover it for a while until we figure out how to cover it the best way. Okay? So I would use, again, my experience in the nonprofit world, in the business world, and bring it to the school district board of trustees.
Let's shift to talking a little bit about how teachers do their jobs. And part of what we've seen is the public weighing in on what teachers should be teaching and that sort of thing. How much freedom should teachers have with regard to teaching the district's curriculum? Should it be a wide latitude, or should it be very specific? Teach this way.
A curriculum is based on a standard of teaching. Okay? So teachers go by that curriculum. Do they have leadway? Yeah, I think they have leadway within that curriculum setting. Okay? What might be spoken about is a piece of curriculum called Wit and Wisdom. Okay? I've looked through it. Some of my opponents talk about that being connected to critical race theory. So that's part of the argument about what we should teach in schools. Okay? Critical race theory is basically about learning history the correct way and teaching it the correct way. And don't leave out the dark stuff. That's all it is about, really, Brian. But opponents of critical race theory and curriculum changes are about this idea, maybe, that we close our mind to stuff as opposed to opening our minds. Curriculum changes, curriculum adaptions also are about creating space to open that mind as well. Okay? Learning is about opening the mind. It's not about closing it. So if we decide curriculum changes, oh God, they hurt my feelings, they do this. Well, they might have to hurt your feelings in order to learn and be a better student. Okay? So, committee decides that, I believe, in the school district. So, a trusted committee. I mean, I don't think they bring in guys that make the report bad or whatever. I think they're all competent and they do their job well. And what comes out of there is, and again, parents are involved in that too. It's not like nobody's left out of the process, Brian. Everybody is welcome to the process. Okay, whether it's up to you whether or not you want to be involved in it. But if you're not involved in it, then don't complain about it. Okay, unless you're involved in a situation and trying to make it better, don't complain. Well, I don't like my schools. Well, why don't you? Well, I don't know. Okay, geez.
So you kind of addressed the question, the next part of the question, which is how much parental involvement should there be in curriculum decisions? It sounds like you're saying get involved on the front end of the process?
Yes, if you're being welcomed, if the district says, we'd like some parent input here, raise your hand. Say, hey, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. Okay? And I'll talk to my friends about what I'm doing so they know what I'm doing, that I'm part of the process of engagement.
Parents are busy though. Everybody has, lots going on, so most people don't take the time to look at curriculum before it's adopted by the district. If a parent has a concern about what's being taught, what do you think the process should be for voicing that concern and addressing the way it's being taught?
I think there's an open door policy at the school district. So I think our new superintendent, Dr. Crespo, has an open door policy, and she'd be willing to listen to whatever concerns that person has, that student or a parent or whoever, community member has, and then figure out a solution based on what I've seen of her. She seems like she's an action-oriented superintendent, which I appreciate. Plus, she also listens to people too, which I appreciate.
Does the school board have a role in that?
The school board always has a role just as a community member, okay, member of the community. Okay. But the school board is also looked up to as being a person that I can go to talk about my concerns in education. And I hope that they will listen to me and bring that forward to the other school board members, that there is a concern on the education piece.
Okay. You touched on a little bit by talking about critical race theory, but be more specific, if you would, about how you feel about the teaching of racial discrimination as part of the U.S. history curriculum. What should be taught, what maybe should not be addressed at the K-12 level?
Well, I'm going to say something, Brian, maybe. I used these when I grew up in elementary school. I was always fighting about race, about being called a name, about being called whatever. Okay. Then I learned how to use this. Okay. And I was taught that, how to use this. Get away from this and learn this. Okay. So I'm always learning. I'm always looking to learn. I'm always looking to create an environment for learning. Okay. Critical race theory is simply just about learning. Learning history, learning the bad parts, celebrating the good parts. Because we know we have bad parts in history, Brian. We know that. But we can't shut that off. We cannot shut that off in terms of learning. Kindergarten child, okay, whatever. At what age do they start learning? I mean, I see my 2.5-year-old grandson, and I know his brain's going like crazy learning. I see my 16-year-old granddaughter, and again, she's in high school, but I know that brain's clicking. So it's a matter of stop being afraid of change. Stop being afraid of what you think is different. Diversity is about having this rainbow of color. Okay? Hate is about closing that rainbow and shutting it off. I don't deal in hate, Brian. I love that rainbow. I'm a diversity guy.
Another academic issue, do you support the current opt-in policy for checking out books the opt-out policy for checking out books at school libraries, or do you support an opt-in policy for parents in schools?
I'm sorry.
To check out a book, or should they, with their parents' permission, or how should that work?
Okay, once again, I've looked at the opt-out policy for the district, and I think there's nothing wrong with it. It gives parents latitude like crazy about what they can do in terms of books. Plus, there's a challenge process beyond the opt-out policy. So if a parent wants to challenge a book, they can do that. And then it goes to a committee on that challenge. So there's a process, again, Brian, that can be followed that can protect the rights of the student and the parent, and even the librarian. So it protects everybody. So to me, an opt-in to opt-out sounds kind of, I don't even know how to call it in a psychology phrase, actually. It's just reverse psychology, maybe. I don't know. But my children, again, they're adult children now, but they're great learners. But that came from reading, and reading whatever. You know, oh, you get nervous because, oh, I looked at some boobs or whatever. Oh my God, or they said something. Well, yeah, oh, but what about it? Did you learn anything? Did you just, were you nervous? Were you embarrassed? Well, maybe that's what had to happen. You had to get embarrassed because of that passage in that book. But did that throw you off from learning? No, it didn't. It didn't throw you off from learning. They want to ban books like Catcher in the Rye, Brian. Okay? Historical, classical books. Animal Farm. Gosh, I can go on and on. I made a list, but I can go on. But other books they're looking at banning has to deal with the LGBT community, has to deal with the community of color. Okay, again, hatred coming in the frame of we want to protect our children. That's not how you protect them. You leave them open. You leave them open to look at this big world of ours.
Sometimes policies do need to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you think the policy or the process should be for changing policies within the school district? Do you agree with the process as it is now, or do you think it needs to change?
As it currently stands, I see nothing really wrong with the process. Okay? It allows for parents of all, again, everybody, community members, parents, whoever, to come in and look at the process. I believe it's an open door policy. Yeah, we got to review stuff. There's nothing wrong with review. There's nothing wrong with critical thinking, you know, thinking about something in a way differently. Okay? One of the issues we have in the schools is Spanish-speaking grandparents, parents, whatever. Okay, many times those students have to translate for the elders, okay, for the teacher, for the principal. And I think maybe we need Spanish translators in a school, bilingual ones, that can step in so that that student goes back to their classroom and learns and doesn't have to sit here for an hour with their grandma or their mom or their aunt or uncle and translating for the teacher, because that takes away from direct learning. Okay. So Spanish translator in schools in the South Triad even, we pilot it, we see if it works. That's part of how you engage a community, how you engage a project, a problem, an issue, processes. It's always based on this idea that you look at it and say, what can we reflectively change? What can we move on to the next level? And what can we live with right now? Always the process, Brian, always the process, at least in my mind. And I've done this a long, long time.
What other issues are important to you in running and causing you to run for school board that we haven't addressed so far today?
Well, they said equity in the schools. And again, that's been a big problem. When you look at the North schools, you go, oh, pretty, they're nice and everything. How did they get there? Who approved that issue? Why couldn't we just use that money to maybe build our schools even better and not, but again, so I don't know what the process was. But now the process should be, let's look at this. We got aging schools in the South Triad. We got aging schools in the Central Triad. Maybe the East Triad doesn't have that many. I don't know for sure. Maybe the at-large folks are looking at all the schools. Okay, but I know there's some beautiful schools in the North. I know there's some beautiful schools in the South. Let's make them all beautiful. Let's make them all worthwhile. Let's figure out the economics of this thing.
Other personal issues, other things that are personal parts of your background that you wanted to highlight, anything that you wanted to share with us about what makes you qualified to be a school board member?
Cheyenne native all my life, Brian. Born and raised on the west side of town in an ethnic diverse neighborhood called the Pozo, or the Bottoms. So that's how I grew up. I've been engaged in the South Side because of my children, my adult children. My boys went to Cole. My daughter went to Goings. And they all went to Johnson Junior High. So they've been part of this South Side fabric as I have for, it seems like forever. I know many, we call them compadres and comadres, so godparents. I know many of those in the South Side and the West Side. So I think I can link that voice. Like I said, I am a community activist. I've been one for forever. And you need those kind of tools for a brand new seat. This is a voice, like I told you, that hasn't been heard. So how do you get that voice together and bring it into a unified voice? Because that's what has to happen. We can't say Southside forever or whatever one t-shirt says. We have to say South Triad. Community means moving together.
Now, under this new model, this is one seat among 7 on the board. How do you balance the representation for the South Triad for Area 1 versus representing the entire district or making decisions for the entire district?
Well, the school board itself has to be a collaborative effort. Okay? I'm one voice. Okay? Now, if some other folks get in that are similar voices to mine, then we could have a threesome of voices joining together in the school district to say, this is what our needs are collectively. Okay? And so, we have to figure out how to work together, how to be a team, and how to talk separately as well, to raise that voice. Yeah, this is the voice that's coming out of the South Triad, and it sounds similar to the East Triad voice, and it sounds similar to that Central, or those at-large voices. So let's figure that out. Let's figure out how we connect these voices and make it best for all the students in Laramie County School District number 1.
Anything else you want to share with us today?
Actually, I don't. I was a little apprehensive, and nervous, because it's been a while since I've done something like this. So I'm glad, and I thank you for the opportunity to let me share, and actually say that I'm the best candidate for the South Triad.
Joe, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.